Hi, I'm Ron Jess for Jessfor30, and very excited today to have a great Detroit Tiger with me from the World Series champion 1984 Detroit Tigers, Lance Parrish. Hi, Lance.
Ron, nice to see you. Thank you.
You too. Lance, we'll just get right to baseball, okay?
Why not?
Yeah, I know you're good with that. What did and what does the 1984 season mean to you?
Well, it's the culmination of my career, pretty much, and it's actually the only time that I was ever in the postseason during the course of my career. Played almost 20 years, got in one time, and I will say that if I had an opportunity to pick one year to be in the playoffs in the World Series, that would have been the year, because it was just a fabulous year.
It was magical.
Oh, my.
You know, we were down for the playoff game. One of them was at Kansas City.
Yep.
And then we were down for a San Diego game, the first one. Lance, we were sitting so far up in the left center field area. I had never been there before. We were like, we're sitting under this thing over our heads, but happy to be there, you know.
Well, as Bob Uecker would say, be in the front row. Well, there's not a bad seat in Tiger Stadium as far as I've heard.
Yeah,
unless you were behind a post.
The poles, yeah, those were killers. The whole day you were leaning around a pole. Well, they took care of that with the new stadium, Comerica. That place is really special too, and they just need a championship.
They do, and I think they're getting closer. So.
Well, Lance, you're going to release a book, The Enchanted Season, on June 11th this year.
Yep. Well, it's a work that I took on with Tom Gage, who is, as everybody knows, a Hall of Fame writer here in Detroit, local guy. And we connected on the idea of putting this project together. And probably a little bit more about my personal life than I would have wanted in the beginning of it, you know, but it kind of talks about my years growing up, going to high school and the crazy things that went on there and into the minor leagues and then on to obviously making it to the major leagues. And the years in the beginning before we ended up putting that 84 championship series together. But, you know, the probably the last half of the book is all about the 84 season and what a fabulous season it was. And, you know, the different highlights that we talk about, obviously going 35-5 to start the season. And we were wire-to-wire champions. And, you know, we won 104 games during the regular season that year, which is still a Detroit Tigers record. So don't want anybody to forget about that.
You know, we hope they break it this year, you know.
It'd be nice.
I was living in Ohio then, and our only real connection was WJR radio. And J.P. McCarthy, the great one, he was awesome. But what a loaded team you had in 84.
Well, we did. And it was actually the culmination of a lot of, you know, picking up pieces of the puzzle here and there. I've mentioned that Bill Ajoy, who was the general manager of the ball club then, and actually had been involved in our scouting department for a number of years before he assumed that general manager position, signed all of us that were a part of the nucleus of that team, beginning with me, actually. In 1974, I signed out of high school, and then every year after that, different guys were signed that basically formed the young nucleus of our championship ball club. Now, when we got close to 84, there were other pieces of the puzzle that were traded for or signed as free agents that added to our club. But, you know, he was the architect of that.
When you say that perfect lead into my third question, Lance. So you're coming out of Lakeland. Sparky wants another right-handed hitter at, I believe, first base. He finds Barbaro Garbe. He kicks the Michigan football legend Rick Leach to the curb. It really ticked off a lot of fans, and I guess that was part of putting the puzzle together.
Well, I mean, in retrospect, yeah, you can look at it that way. Obviously, it worked out well. But at the time, I was one of those ticked off fans that
Were you?
Rick and I were really good friends.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When he signed with the Tigers, we, hit it off instantly, and he lived over where I lived in Farmington Hills, and we used to ride to the ballpark all the time. So he's the one that introduced me to Michigan football and listened to Bob Ufer tapes, from, our apartment into Tiger Stadium, and just had a lot of fun together. And I'd grown very close to his family. And, when I heard that they were releasing him in spring training of that year, I mean, I was just as devastated as he was.
Yeah.
Probably not as devastated as he was, but it hit me hard. I was like, this guy, it's guys like Rick Leach, Jason Thompson, Steve Kemp, all those guys that were signed by our organization, and I thought were actually going to be a part of that nucleus that ended up getting traded away or released. It was very disappointing for me, and it was kind of a shock to me. But, you come to the realization that that's how ball clubs are put together, and that's how baseball is actually operated. You can't, you never lose the friendship, but, you just can't stay on the same ball club anymore for any length of time because the pieces are always moving. But, I will give Sparky and Bill LaJoy a lot of credit for the piecing together that they did to put that 84 team where they were, because we really, really were a good ball club.
Well, Rick was a member at St. Fabian's, and Father Shabala was the pastor. Okay. He was here a few months ago.
Okay, good deal.
We released this week his little video, and he was close. He's still close to Rick's wife, and I think Rick's in Traverse City now.
Yeah.
Now Rick Leach, we had a problem at St. Agatha where we grew up at Grand River and Beach at the parish, and a couple of the football coaches said, "Hey, we're picking uniforms up out of the garbage from Canton and Plymouth. We're getting the scraps." They said, "Ron, can you get us some guys and buy us uniforms? You guys are all in the suburbs. You left us here." And so my brother called Rick Leach, my brother Danny called Rick, and I knew Mark Messner out here in Heartland.
Yep.
And we got Jeff Wiska also, and they all came into the AOH club at 5 and Beach, and they talked, and we had a dinner, and we raised $15,000.
Perfect.
And bought these kids uniforms. And Rick Leach, God, he was hilarious. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. He was a funny guy, good guy.
Good guy, fun to be around. Like you say, I had very entertaining our car rides into the ballpark.
I'm sure.
He couldn't say enough, couldn't tell enough stories about Michigan football and Bo Schembechler and, everything that went on, behind the scenes. So, he made me a fan, to be honest with you. I kind of liked watching Michigan play anyway, but when I hooked up with Rick, he made me a solid fan. So it was, I bleed maize and blue now. So.
Oh, yeah. Good man. One of our other guests here was Clint Copenhaver. He was on the 97 team. He had Charles Woodson.
Okay, good deal.
Took quarterbacks, Brian Greasy, Tom Brady, Drew Henson.
Right.
Those three quarterbacks. But Clint's in Brighton. He loves the town. He's been here since he was 4 years old. His son is a quarterback, and my grandson's a center on the Brighton Youth Football, and it's just, you talk about magical. It's really fun when you get to be old like me to be able to look and watch not your kids, but also grandkids who are competitive.
Sure.
Play hard.
Well, I've got 11 grandkids, and they all play sports.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about in today's day and age is I can watch everything on video on my phone. Yeah. Everything's recorded, and if I can't be there because they're spread out all over the country, but the videos come in all the time, and I get to keep up with them that way. So when we're not out actually visiting them, I get to just flip my phone on or flip the computer on and watch to see how they're doing and watch their progress. It's and they are very competitive, and I love to see them out there competing and having fun. And, I will say I was a little bit nervous when I used to watch my own kids play. Mm-hmm. Not so much my grandkids. I just enjoy them because I know that they're having fun and doing what they want to do. So it's a good thing.
It's really good. So you had the 68 world champs, and we just touched briefly before we started, and 84 world champs. 16 years apart. Now it's 40 years later and nothing, Lance. And I just brought season tickets. That's how we met. So tell me that was a good investment.
Well, I think it is. Yeah, if you watch how they're playing down in spring training, I mean, ironically, Al Avila was the one that started this whole journey with the new team that they have kind of formulating right now. He made the decision a few years back that they were going to, they had to dump salary and get rid of some veteran players, but they were going to start building from within, which is exactly what we did when I was coming up through the organization. When the 68 club was starting to get a little bit older and phasing out, they decided to rebuild that ball club from within. And there was a lot of guys on that 84 team that were actually drafted by the Tigers, just like there's a lot of guys that are on that roster right now for the Tigers that were actually drafted by the Tigers. And they're all starting to gel, it seems, at the same time. We got some great talent. So I'm optimistic. I mean, it's not easy. We ran away with things in 1984, and I thought that was just the beginning of something that was going to be really good. That's the only year we ever won. That just goes to show you how hard it is to win. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that these guys stay hungry and put it together and keep working hard, which looks like that's exactly what they're doing. But I think if everybody stays healthy this year, they're going to open some eyes. Will they win it all? I mean, who knows? Anything's possible. I think they're going to make a good showing, and I think that, I think they're going to pique a lot of people's interest in the Detroit Tigers again, and people are going to start talking about them as, they've got the ability on that ball club, and they've got, the leadership on that ball club to win. And whether it happens this year, next year, and then, 3 years, I don't know, but I know they're on the right track, and I know it's going to happen.
Well, the Lions did it. How about that?
Well, yeah.
Lance, you had the honor to play at and call Tiger Stadium your home field. And, we used to take the bus from Grand River and 7 Mile, 7 Grand Shopping Center down to Trumbull, and we'd just watch twilight doubleheaders when we were like 13 and get out of there at midnight. And so I remember the first time going to Comerica, we had these seats above the catcher way up high, and I walked in there, and I'm looking at everybody and looking at the new stadium, and first thing, I miss Tiger Stadium. I miss the guy with the cigar, with the T-shirt, the big fat guy with the mustard dripping down his shirt with a beer in his hand. Now you look like we walked into Walmart. Everybody, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It was really weird.
Well, Tiger Stadium was just a unique place.
Yeah, it's gone.
I grew up in Southern California, so my experience going to professional baseball games was Dodger Stadium and Anaheim Stadium where the Angels played. And here, these are big modern stadiums with ginormous parking lots that encompass the entire stadium, and that's where everybody parked. And my first day showing up at Tiger Stadium, I remember driving down the freeway because I had been talking to the cab driver, and we were getting close. He pointed it out. He goes, "Well, there it is." And I'm looking like, where? I was like, I didn't even register. So
your first day there?
When we got off the freeway, and it was like, there's light standards on top of this building, so it must be Tiger Stadium. But there was no parking anywhere. I was kind of wondering where everybody parked.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, but obviously they found places to park all over, and but it was something that I was not used to seeing because, like I said, Dodger Stadium, Anaheim Stadium had giant parking lots all the way around it. But I always felt like Tiger Stadium was a baseball cathedral, because it was double-decked all the way around. Mm-hmm. The stadium was, the fans were right on top of you. And in 1984, obviously we were having a great year, and we drew great crowds all year long. It was like you could feel the electricity every game. And nothing like having a home crowd behind you that were right on top of you, that were, they'd wear the opposition out and, yell stuff at them, and they were always behind us. So it was very motivating.
Well, you speaking of honors again, I'm gonna go back. I was gonna say we had bat days there when we were You know, can you imagine giving 20,000 kids
I know,
bats and
I
they're
know.
hitting it on the... But honor, again, what I was going to was Sparky Anderson. That had to be something to play for a guy like him. He was a good guy.
Oh, great guy. And, you know, it's funny is, and I point this out in my book, that when Sparky Anderson was hired, we had just come off a West Coast trip, okay? The guy that was managing our ball club at that time was a guy by the name of Les Moss. Les Moss was my AA manager and my AAA manager. And I've told people every time I've had the opportunity that if it wasn't for Les Moss, I'd have never made it to the major leagues. He was that influential and that good of a manager and a coach, I thought. When we came off of the West Coast trip, we had just gotten back over 500 for our record, and then all of a sudden I find out that Les got fired and they hired Sparky Anderson. And even though I knew who Sparky was,
Everybody
obviously,
did.
it was like I was pissed.
Were you?
I was.
Yeah.
Because I felt like Les didn't get a fair shake. I thought he was a great manager. I thought he would have done very well if he had had the opportunity. You know, and I've heard all the stories that he wasn't a great communicator with the media and all that. And I know, you know, Sparky has that certain something about him, you know, where, you know, he could sit down and, you know, talk to the media all day long. Sometimes you couldn't always keep up with where he was going. He was the great rabbit trail master when it came to conversations. But, you know, he obviously was a great baseball man. He knew what he was doing. He was hired to come in and change the guard. Not only develop this young nucleus that we had put together, but change the environment in our clubhouse. And, you know, first thing he did, you know, if you remember when he was managing in Cincinnati, there was no facial hair in Cincinnati. Nobody had a mustache. Nobody had a beard. Everybody had pretty short hair, except for maybe Pete had that little, whatever you call it, Dutch boy haircut. But he was
unique.
Very stickler, very much a stickler on how you looked and your appearance, how you wore your uniform, the whole 9 yards. In fact, when he came in, he changed the whole travel dress code for us. There was no wearing jeans, it was suit and tie. You know, you wore a sport coat and a tie, whether you wanted to wear a three-piece suit or just some nice slacks and a sport coat and a tie. That's the way we traveled. You're a professional ball club, you're going to look professional. So it was like, and it was my way or the highway. And Sparky had the authority back in those days because there wasn't, you know, 10-year, $300 million contracts. So when he wanted something done, I believe Jim Campbell gave him the authority to get it done. So, you know, he threw his weight around. He let everybody know, look, this is the way I operate. You either toe the line and do the things that I ask you to do, or you're not going to be around very long.
Well, I think I remember hearing him at one time say, give me great players and we will win.
Yeah.
He said, I can't win with crappy players. I mean, look what he had in Cincinnati. He had an all-star team in Cincinnati.
Well, he might have had the best team ever if you really look at it.
They weren't bad.
No.
Johnny Bench and the gang. Lance, where did you grow up in California?
You know, when we moved out to Southern, I actually was born in Pennsylvania, right around the Pittsburgh area. My mom and my dad were both from that area. My mom and dad actually had just come out of the Marine Corps. They met in the Marine Corps, to be honest with you. When my dad got out of the Marine Corps, he became a policeman in Pennsylvania. And he got tired of walking a beat in the cold weather and the snow and all that. So after doing that for a few years, we had some relatives in Southern California, in the Orange County area. And they had told my dad, look, at LA County is hiring. They're looking for, they need deputy sheriffs and all. So my dad decided, I'm gone. So he picked up and went to California. He left my mom and my sister and I back in Pennsylvania. But he went out to California and went through the Sheriff's Academy. And when he graduated from the Sheriff's Academy, we flew out to meet him. And we all flew out on my 6th birthday. So I'll never forget that day. But
were you back together then as a
Yeah,
family?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't like my parents separated or anything.
Right.
He just let me go out and take care of business, and then
He
when
was
I
a Marine.
graduate,
Yeah.
and then you guys joined. So we stayed. Obviously my mom's parents and all of her family were out in Pennsylvania, so we thought it would be easier for her to, put things together and operate while he was out going to the Sheriff's Academy and getting all that. So anyway, we moved out there. We moved to a little town called Diamond Bar, which is actually in L.A. County, but it's borders right up against Orange County. So it was, and we were far enough away from L.A. that I always felt like I was in Orange County anyway. But there was an area out there, like I said, called Diamond Bar, and it was actually the Diamond Bar Ranch. There was a lot of big ranches in Southern California at that time that were starting to get developed. All the developers were moving in. So there was a North Diamond Bar project and a South Diamond Bar project, and we lived in the South Diamond Bar area. So we lived out there, went to high school out there, elementary school, all that. In fact, we didn't even have it was so new of a developed area that we didn't even have a high school. We had to get bused out to a little town called Walnut, California, where the high school was. So, I went to 4 years at Walnut, and then I ended up getting drafted by the Tigers, and the rest is history. But I almost went to college. I mean, I had an opportunity to go to UCLA to play football. I played football in high school and had a few opportunities for scholarships, but I wanted to stay close to home, so I picked UCLA, and as it turned out, the Tigers came knocking, so baseball being my first love, I opted to go baseball.
That's awesome. We just do here for a minute, Lance, is I just have a couple of sponsors. I've only asked 2 people, and they said yes.
Okay.
I don't know. But anyway, Mamma Mia's Pizza at Grand River and Beach in Redford Township, as Darren McCarty said the other day, great za. So anyway, they sell the best Italian. They're nice people. And Dr. Timothy Kaczynski at 13 and Telegraph, he's a Red Wings dentist. He does thousands of implants. He's trained thousands of dentists. He's a super guy, and he's got painless dentistry. So anyway.
There you go.
What do you tell these young kids who say baseball is slow and it's boring? I get it from my grandkids, so I want to hear what the pro says.
Well, it's just like anything. If you understand the game and you know what you're looking for, it's not slow and it's not boring. There's strategy involved. It's a game that requires a lot of skill to be successful at. It's not that easy. The funny thing about, slow and boring and you watch the game on TV sometimes and you think, watch a guy hitting, because my dad used to do it to me all the time. When I was in the minor leagues, his famous saying to me, and I think he picked it up from, I don't know if it was Pete Rose or Ted Williams or somebody, but he would, every time I'd be on the phone talking to him, he'd go, see the ball, hit the ball. And I go, if only it was that easy.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the major leagues and he was able to watch some of my games on TV, I'd talk to him on the phone, and he'd go, why do you keep swinging at that pitch that's down and away? And I go, well, because I have that long to make a decision to swing at it, and it looked pretty good when I made my mind up I was going to swing. I said, I obviously would rather not swing at those, and I'm working on that, but, it's not as easy as it looks on TV sometimes. But, baseball, I think for the most part anymore, the last few postseasons that I've watched anyway have been extremely exciting. Maybe not every regular season game is very exciting. I mean, we play 162 games. That's a lot of games. And, some games are a little slower than others. But if you love the game and you love the strategy and you kind of manage along with the manager and try to figure out what's going on and what move he might make ahead of time, I think it becomes a fun game to watch. And I've listened to a lot of people that sit in the stands and will watch a 1-0 ball game, and they probably love it more than watching a slugfest. That I was watching the game this morning where the Dodgers were playing the Padres over in South Korea, and I think the Padres beat the Dodgers 15-11. So yeah, that's a lot of fun for the fans in the stands because there's a lot of action. But if you're a true baseball fan and you watch somebody out there dealing on the mound that's just, pitching great, and they got a great pitching duel or something to that effect going on, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of strategy involved.
Well, I believe maybe touching with what you're talking about is being an old pitcher, from 8 years old, Little League. And the brain trust of the Major League Baseball, when they lowered the mound and they shrunk the strike zone from the letters, into this postage stamp.
Right.
Come on, Lance. I think that didn't help the game. What do you think?
I honestly can't speak to that because the strike zone was never that big when I played. I think it became as big as the umpire wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if the umpire was upset with you, you probably got pitches that were called, pretty good ways out of the strike zone just because he was trying to make a point with you.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, they're all checked on, video and QuesTech and all the analytics things that they have available. And they're judged by that and they're graded by that. But back in the day, umpires were not graded. It was like you could have the biggest strike zone you wanted and you weren't really held accountable for it. In fact, I used to get in quite a few arguments over the strike zone, being a catcher and a hitter as well. And it always seemed like the strike zone fluctuated all the time. It drive me insane, actually. But now they've kind of reined it in. I can't imagine with so many guys in today's game that throw in the high 90s and even 100, that if you had a strike zone where the legitimate strike zone was at your letters, I don't see too many people catching up with that and being able to hit it. That's a very difficult pitch to hit as it is. But if somebody's throwing 100 or 99 or 100 plus, you got to be somebody pretty special to catch up to that. So I think, if they've redefined the strike zone the way that I see it on TV now, I accept that. I think it's legit. Mm-hmm. And I think, maybe back in the day, the strike zone might have been a little bit bigger than it should have been. And I think they came to that realization at some point. So I think, I'm happy with it as an ex-player. I'm not for change, I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of an old school guy. But when I see the changes that they've made actually on the strike zone to the dimensions of it now, I'm satisfied with that.
Well, I had my grandson out. Hartland beat Catholic Central and Nova here about a year and a half ago in high school.
Yeah.
And then CC or Orchard Lake St. Mary's, Petrie's kid was coaching, and they had a kid, my grandson, who was 12 for 12 in Toledo. I took him down 3 games. He was 12 for 12. He comes back and decides, I'd rather play lacrosse. He wouldn't tell me. He told his mom. She had to call. Hey, he's afraid to tell you, Papa, but he doesn't want to play baseball. I made him stay. I said, this kid's throwing 100 miles an hour in high school.
Wow.
100. And he wanted to leave. I said, no, we're going to watch. You listen to that mitt pop,
And he didn't want to play baseball? He threw 100?
Well, this is the Orchard Lake St. Mary's
Pay big money
kid.
for that,
The Orchard Lake St. Mary's kid. This is my grandson who was 10. He doesn't want to play anymore.
Oh, okay.
So should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, he should.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why quickly. Because I think as a player, he's a Hall of Famer. No question in my mind. I don't think there's a question in anybody else's mind. Maybe because of the fact that he bet on baseball when he was managing, if they want to keep him out of baseball because of that, not allow him to manage or participate in anything, baseball-wise nowadays, that's, their prerogative. But I think as a baseball player, Pete Rose is a Hall of Famer and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Lance, they're not afraid to make money off him when he announces World Series games, and it's always the buck, right? J.P. McCarthy had a saying, it had to be with money. He said, when you're dealing with money, it's never about the money, it's the amount, And
right.
I thought that was a pretty good one to know.
Very
and
true.
Pete, I didn't think he should be in. The guy Bart Giamatti had a heart attack and died, and he was being a jerk about it. Pete Rose was not admitting. Just admit it. I think that killed him. But I think he should be in too.
Well, do I agree how he handled the whole thing? No. I mean, I agree with you. He should have come out and admitted it. Okay, I did it. But how many times has anybody ever come right out and admit something when they're guilty, unless they're actually proven? I mean, you got to prove it first, and they go, okay, I did it. But again, as a baseball player, he's the all-time hits leader.
Yeah,
for crying out loud. I mean,
didn't they say Ty Cobb killed somebody? Really.
But they haven't been able to prove it, so
Yeah, maybe they could today. Nolan Ryan was 27 years in Major League Baseball, all-time ranking at number 1 in strikeouts, walks, fewest hits per 9 innings, and no hitters. He had 7. That's pretty incredible.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, Nolan Ryan is probably if you took the time to look up his statistics and all the things that he did throughout his career, I mean, he pitched forever. I mean, just his durability alone is amazing. But I think I read something not too long ago. Somebody came out with a little blurb that in 2-run games or something like that, he was like 0 and 100 and I forget what the exact statistic was, but he was 0 and 102 and however close the games were with like a 2-something ERA. Maybe it was when his team was shut out or something. And I'm thinking, wow, so you look at the numbers that he already has, and even if he wins half of those, it's even more of an amazing career. But, I will say this, as good as Nolan Ryan was, okay, when he and Frank Tanana teamed up in California, and Frank was still, getting it up there, and he hadn't hurt his arm. I remember when talking to Steve Kemp because he had got up to the big leagues before I did, and they had just finished a series with the Angels, and I think I had just gotten called up or whatever, and I asked him about, so who's better? He goes, I'll be honest with you. He goes, I would much rather face Nolan Ryan than I would Frank Tanana.
Really?
Because Frank wasn't afraid to run one under your chin, and then he would just have that little smirk on his face. Like,
he was cocky.
Go ahead and lean over the plate one more time.
Lance, he was the best high school basketball player I ever saw in my life.
Basketball player?
At Catholic
How
Central.
about that?
6'4". I watched every game he played. My dad would take us. My brother was there, a year older, Bob. And he would put the ball behind his back. Guys would run that way. Then this guy's coming up, and when he got here, he'd put it behind his back. Smooth as, how smooth he was.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
Well, I can tell you, when I was down in spring training a few years ago, when right after Jack Morris had made the Hall of Fame, I was going to play golf with Frank. Mm-hmm. And I just, before I went out, I said, I'm just curious. I wanted to look up Frank's career numbers. So I Googled him, and I looked up his stats. And then I looked up Jack's numbers. And
Jack Morris?
Jack Morris.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hooked up with Frank at the golf course, I was talking to him, and I go, I'll be honest with you. I said, I just Googled you, and I looked up your numbers, because I really didn't know what your career numbers were. So I wanted to see. And I said, you have better numbers than Jack Morris in quite a few different categories. And he just looked at me, and he goes, that's right.
He knew.
But yeah, Jack's in the Hall of Fame,
yeah.
and Frank's not even in the conversation. But I'll guarantee you one thing, Frank Tanana was a great pitcher.
Well, Frank Tanana, I gotta say this. Okay, back a few months ago, I started doing these, and I'm always scratching, trying to get good people like you, Lance. And so I go to First Baptist Church over there in Southfield, and I got a quart of pickles homemade for him, and I got banana walnut bread. I left it, and then I left the pickles, and I kept writing him notes. He never responded, Lance. Maybe you can help me there. Well, I will get him. But no,
I can tell him you're interested.
Would you?
Sure.
That's all we can ask for.
That's all I can do, yeah.
Tell me you had fun. Yeah, Nolan Ryan, I watched his movie on HBO a couple days ago, and I was looking at it, and Randy Johnson came on, and he said, well, I had so many strikeouts and I was 1,000 behind Nolan Ryan. So he was the strikeout.
Well, there are
king.
some crazy baseball stats out there if you really take the time to look at it. I'm always, we used to trade, Alan Trammell, myself, and Dave Littlefield, who used to be the head of the minor league department for the Tigers, used to have this little thread going where we would, try to research who had the craziest stat, of the day, or who had an amazing performance or career or whatever, that just, has gone out of publicity. You don't hear about it all the time. So we started looking stuff up and trying to one-up each other. And one of the stats that I heard was that Tony Gwynn, for example. Mm-hmm. So Tony Gwynn, I don't even know what his lifetime batting average is. It's well over 300. But somebody came up with a stat that said if Tony Gwynn were alive today and he was reactivated, okay, and was playing for the Padres, he could go 0 for 1,000 and still have over a 300 career batting average.
Really?
I mean, that in itself, if you think about it, is amazing. 0 for 1,000.
Yeah,
that's like 0 for a couple of years.
2 years, yeah. That's funny. I had a buddy of mine, he says, to ask Lance, Dave Mully from Nova, he's an old friend. He said, what did Bill Freehan mean to you?
Oh, my gosh. Well, first of all, Bill Freehan was a great friend. Great friend. In fact, my wife and I lived right down the street from he and his wife, Pat, when we moved to Bloomfield Hills. Well, I wasn't there for very long. That was right before I ended up leaving for free agency and after the 86 season. But while we were there, became very close family-wise. He used to take my boys to football games when I was on the road. And, actually, when he was the head baseball coach at Michigan, got them involved in the summer baseball camps as well. And my oldest son, who eventually ended up going to the University of Michigan to play baseball, wanted to go there solely because of Bill Freehan. And ironically, right before my son graduated from high school and committed to Michigan, Bill Freehan stepped down as the head coach. So he ended up playing for Jeff Zahn at Michigan. But Bill Freehan...
What did he play? What position?
He was a catcher.
Was he?
And he was drafted. He was the number 1 draft pick of the Yankees.
Wow.
In 2000, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, Bill was... I started going to big league camp from the day that I was signed. After my rookie season, I played third base as a rookie. They signed me as a third baseman. And then right after the season was over, they switched me to catcher. The next spring training, I went to Major League spring training because they're always looking for catchers. To catch guys in the bullpen, to catch batting practice. I was just a grunt back in those days. So, to work on my skill set and to help them as much as they needed the help, I went from, and I got tired of it, to be very honest with you. I went from the bullpen to the batting cage, when we took batting practice out on the field at Marchant Stadium. So it was like I'd catch a pitcher out on the field, I'd go back to the bullpen and warm somebody up, and then I'd go back and forth. So it seemed like I spent most of my time just warming people up. Bill Freehan, after his playing days were over, was asked by Sparky to come down to spring training and work with me. It was like I was his project. Try to help Lance. We were both similar in stature. Bill was a great catcher, obviously, very fundamentally sound, and I was rough around the edges. So he did an amazing job and was extremely helpful in my development as a catcher, and just explaining the little nuances about the position. How to call games, how to set up, receive the ball, blah, blah, blah. You can go down the list. And it was not only him, but it was also Les Moss. I mentioned Les Moss. Les Moss was a catcher and played in the major leagues for a number of years. So they were both instrumental in helping me out and helping me in my development as a catcher. But, Bill Freehan was just, a great mentor and meant just an unbelievable amount to me a person, as a friend, and as a coach, really.
So, Lance, your wife works with Safe House for Abused Girls and Women. That's all around Metro Detroit.
Yeah,
that's good. We, because I was kind of getting to, I was going to say travel, hotel life, suitcase life. You know it. I did it. I was the national sales manager, had the country in Canada.
Yeah, wow.
And that's a hard road, especially when your kids are getting older, and avoiding the alcohol and the stuff. Everything that's out there in the world and on the road, you had to see many promising careers burn out because of that.
Well, addiction is a crazy animal, and some people have the strength to recognize that they've got problems, and they're able to steer clear of them after a while. Some people not so fortunate, and I've watched a lot of people get into the game that had an unbelievable amount of talent and bright futures ahead of them. And, from one addiction to the other, whether it be alcohol or drugs or both, just basically destroy their careers. And they were not able to get a handle on it. So, it's a difficult thing. And I don't criticize them. I don't judge them. I know it's hard. And it takes some strong people to be able to navigate through all of that, because the temptations are out there, believe me. But, as far as the shelters for abused women and trafficked women, and, that goes on every day. And it's something that a lot of people might not be aware of. They might not have the opportunity to follow it. It's not something that's, talked about in the media a lot. I mean, it's there, but it's a very serious issue. And, what my wife and other women do at this facility is just to try to give somebody an opportunity to get back on their feet, to get their life straightened out, and whatever they're going through, again, there's no judgment there. If they're committed to doing it, we have the women that are willing to help them through it. So, I commend my wife and the other women that get involved and want to help and share their lives that way. So it's a great thing.
Well, everything is by the grace of God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's everything. And we'll lighten it up a little bit here. Last night I was talking with Denny McLain, and I was texting him. We've been to dinner here in Brighton. He likes our pickles too. So he had just had cancer surgery. He had a heart attack. He lost his wife Sharon.
Yeah.
Still working on the road and lives here in Brighton. You know what he wanted me to ask you? He said, ask Lance if he still wears his cup.
No.
All right. I'll tell him you said no.
If I was going to go warm somebody up in a bullpen somewhere, I probably would wear it, but I have no reason to wear it other than that. So
I thought that was, you know how he is, right? That comes right from him this afternoon.
Denny's a great dude. Great career, obviously.
31 wins.
Oh my gosh. I think I mentioned, I don't know if I did or not, but when I was managing up at West Michigan, he had come up there to sign some autographs one day. They brought him in, and he came into the clubhouse and was in my office, and we were chatting. And I said, hey, would you mind going out and saying a few words to the guys? I'm sure they would love to hear from you. He's one of the all-time Tiger greats. So he goes, yeah, I would love to. I said, well, wait here. I'm going to go out and I'm going to kind of prep everybody, and then I'll call you out. He goes, yeah, no problem. So I go out there, and I made everybody get in the clubhouse and sit down, and I kind of started off by quizzing them. Can anybody in here name the last pitcher who won 30 games at the major league level? And nobody, nothing.
You told me when I met you at Comerica, you said the guys are saying like Roger Clemens,
yeah, they were, Ryan,
yeah. Really?
I was like, wow. So anyway, I asked him a few other questions. They couldn't answer anything. So I go, oh my gosh. I said, this guy, he's one of us, for crying out
Tiger.
Loud. Learn your history, for crying out loud. So I said, I reeled off his stats, Denny McLain, 31-5 or whatever he was, 31-6, with a amazing ERA, and
like
he was back-to-back Cy Youngs and won the MVP, and so anyway, he came in. He was great. Ironically, and they still do it to this day. But when you come in from batting practice, they have a big spread out on the table. It's whatever it is for the day, but eating is not an issue anymore in minor league baseball. They cater stuff out, or they, make great food anymore, whereas back in the day they didn't have nothing. So, that's the first thing that Denny focused in on. There's all this food on the table. He looked like you were in a smorgasbord. And he goes, just let me start off by saying, he goes, you see all this food right here? He goes, back when I played in the minor leagues, we didn't have any of this shit, And
that would be him. I could hear him saying it.
So, he went on to, talk to him, and, they all got a kick out of him, and he, threw a few jokes out at him. They were all laughing. So he entertained them, and he was great about it. But, it just gave me the opportunity to introduce them to one of the all-time Tiger great and one of the all-time Major League Baseball greats. Fabulous career.
31 wins.
I don't know if anybody ever won 31 games again.
No,
that ain't going to happen.
Dizzy Dean, I think, had 30. He beat him, right?
Yeah. The way they do go to today's game, I don't think it's going to happen.
He loves baseball, Lance. I've talked to him a little bit about it. And so you were rubbing elbows with the actor Tom Selleck, and he, I'm going to ask what he likes, but he was on Blue Bloods, Friends, Magnum, P.I.
Yeah.
What's that dude like?
I met him on a few different occasions, a few times with the Tigers, one time when I was out playing with the Angels. But the very first time I met him was when he snuck into Tiger Stadium. And I don't know who he, had contacted, probably contacted the front office, and then they contacted our clubhouse guy, Jim Schmeichel. But he had a uniform ready for him, and he was wanting to go out and take batting practice with it. They didn't notify any of the media. He didn't want any media around. But obviously the media found out somehow, and they all, after a while, came pouring into the stadium. But he just wanted the opportunity, because he grew up a Tigers fan, wanted to take batting practice in Tiger Stadium. So he was in there taking some swings with everybody else, he'd take his turn. And then all of a sudden it happened. He hit one into the upper deck in right field. Upper deck.
Wow.
And as soon as it landed in the seats, he took a step back and just kind of got a little smirk on his face and smiled, like taking in the moment. Then he got back in there and started.
How cool is that?
But, the thing I felt sorry for him about was when he came back in the clubhouse after batting practice, everybody likes to have baseballs signed by anybody, and here we are in Major League Stadium, so there's, plenty of baseballs. I think they had like 6 dozen baseballs stacked up in front of his locker and asked him if he would sign them all, because everybody in various places. I even got one for my wife.
Did you?
I was one of those people as well.
Well, he's a big man.
But he was he was great about it all. As friendly as he could be. He loved the opportunity to do it. So
Tom Selleck was thanked by Harrison Ford. He turned down Indiana Jones. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I try to do something so at least I know what I'm talking about.
Learn something new every day.
A little bit, yeah. Who are your best friends today, Lance, and from that great 84 team, too?
Well, probably the guys that I stay in the most contact with are Gibby and Tram. We play golf together still quite a bit in the summertime. And, I used to go down to spring training and have an opportunity to rub elbows with those guys down there, but I don't make it down there too often anymore. So I talk to Frank quite a bit. In fact, I play golf with him as well. So, Tom Brookins, he's a little harder to track down on occasion, but, stay in touch with him. Darrell Evans, I talk to on the phone every once in a while, run into him every now and then. Obviously I'm going to see everybody again this summer because they're going to have a function at the end of August, I believe, to honor our 84 championship team. So they're going to, I assume, try to contact everybody that's still around.
And Jim Leland's got a day, too.
And Jim Leland's got a big day coming up, yeah.
Isn't Cooperstown fun?
It is fun.
I was sitting out there with the Tiger hat one day, and all the kids are in the car, and Monte Carlo, in the 80s or something. We'd been there 3 or 4 times. My son played in the Field of Dreams out there. And I'm sitting there, and this guy in the Yankee hat, he's like 90. And I'm talking with the guy, and it's 90 outside.
Yeah.
And my wife, she's like, I get in the car, she says, Ron, you'd talk to a pole. I said, dude, Michelle. I mean, we were talking baseball, and Cooperstown's like.
What better place to talk baseball than Cooperstown? That guy might have been somebody, too. You never know.
I don't know.
He could have been one of the boys from way back in the day that played for somebody. And, what's funny is I've been to Cooperstown I don't know how many times. Mm-hmm. Never actually set foot in the Hall of Fame until this last summer. And I was there with my wife to watch my grandson play in a baseball tournament in the summer, because they have those big kids tournaments in Cooperstown and around Cooperstown. Mm-hmm. So there's a big facility up there that I believe is operated, maybe owned by Cal Ripken Jr., and they have tournaments in there, one after the other. So my grandson, who lives in Southern California, their whole team traveled all the way to Cooperstown, New York, to play in a baseball tournament.
The Field of Dreams
and
tournament.
they said, that's it.
Yeah.
And they set up a trip to go inside the Hall of Fame and tour it, and I went with them. And that's the first time I've ever set foot in there.
You're kidding.
How about that? It was great, though.
Yeah, that is, isn't it special?
Yeah,
it's just like Canton, too. I took my grandson and my son, Jeremy. We all went to Canton here a couple of years ago, and they have a thing at the Football Hall of Fame where Joe Namath comes up on the stage. It's like one of those Walt Disney things, Lance. Yeah. Looks like he's there. Yeah. And Joe Namath's talking to you, and it's in a locker room,
How about that?
Yeah, it's really cool. So since living in Detroit, what do you think of the Motor City fans, the huge following for, pretty much all sports, Lance?
Well, I've always thought that, obviously my experience as a baseball player, that we had great fans. But I've come to realize that Michigan is full of just great sports fans. They love their sports teams. And I guess that came to fruition, this football season, just the way they supported the Lions. I know everybody's been waiting forever for the Lions to get it together.
1957.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
and
year I was born.
I was so excited. We all were. I was part of the mob, man. I wanted to see him go all the way.
Aiden Hutchison, the Michigan guy from Dearborn Divine Child. That's one of the things. Darren McCarty was sitting right there a month or so ago. We were talking, and he said, Ron, he was talking about Brighton. He said, we have hockey guys, football, we have baseball come out of Brighton, and he said, it's sports. It's the love of sports. It takes you away from this other noise.
Hopefully.
Red Wings are on tonight.
Hey.
They were winning.
I was there a month ago pulling the scoring horn.
Yeah. You and Darren both did it. Yeah. That was pretty cool.
That was very cool. Very cool.
So baseball is the subject today, and when you pitch the game, it doesn't matter whether you're 6 years old in minor B or you're pitching the 7th game of the World Series. The pitcher gets his brand new ball, and they sniff it. And there's nothing better, a pitcher getting the ball. But this one's from Denny McLain. It's signed. It's got all his stats and everything Denny did in baseball, Lance. You probably already have one.
No, I'm not with all this on it. This is something. Well, that's great. Thank you very much. Well, this just reiterates what I was saying. What an amazing pitcher he was. What an amazing career. Thank you.
You're welcome. I represent H.O. Treras Company. It's a 100-year anniversary at Oak Park. Really great family and good people. It's a baseball hat. And
well, it's officially a golf hat now.
Okay. Well, here's where it's fun, Lance. What we do with these, you see that name on there?
Jess Pickles.
What's in GD?
GD 73023.
23, but they stay fresh. We get them when they're really small and crisp, and they stay that way. This thing.
Now, is this you?
Yes, we make them. These are yours, but you have to rate them, Lance. Yeah.
I have to rate it?
1 to 10. There's no pressure.
I am somewhat of a pickle connoisseur. So
oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
The first one we've had.
Wow, very good.
It's not Clausen's or who's the big pickle maker. There's no preserve.
Bubby's. My wife's a big Bubby's pickles fan. Clausen.
Yeah.
These are amazing.
Molasses. But here's what's cool about these. See how clear that is? Since July, there's no preservatives. There's not. I mean, you've got obviously the vinegar and the salt.
No, that's great.
But we just take.
Well, I don't ever give anybody a perfect score, so I'll give you a 9.5. How's that?
Oh, thank you.
I love them.
That's a high score.
I'll kill these in a few days.
Will you?
Guarantee you. Yeah.
All right.
Thank
this
you.
This has been great. Nice to meet you,
I appreciate
Lance.
it. Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure.